Stop. Listen, before we get into this at all, two things need to be said. One, this is a beta. So everything that I say today is based on the information that we have today. Tomorrow, if all of this changes, which absolutely could happen, my opinion will change. And so when you go into this and you see my opinion, know that it is a beta and it can change. Second, this is not the hero's journey. It is not THJ. It is not some modified version of THJ. It is a very, very, very different game. I would even argue that the triple classing is probably the only thing that is similar outside of the fact that it takes place in the EverQuest realm, universe, etc., etc. The pure philosophy that is being applied to EverQuest Legends is entirely different than, say, the philosophy that was applied through the hero's journey. Now, first I want to go over the good. Befallen, okay? They've started out with this sort of original custom dungeon that always has names up, always has mobs, fast respawns. There's tons and tons of difficulty or ease based on the level of the dungeon you're in. It's just really well done. It's great. I think that at the end of the day, it is a really, really good place to go to level, to get items, and to up the difficulty and level your items. You will get XP. There's a lot of fun. There's locked doors. There's interesting named. And you can't just run out to a wiki right now and just look it up just to see, hey, you know, is this going to be a good place or is this going to be a bad place? The triple class system also done really well. They utilize the persona system, or so it appears, and by doing so, they have integrated this way of you picking a primary class, and then through that primary class, you're picking a secondary and a tertiary class as well. You don't get to start with 3 classes. You actually have to level to level 10 in order to pick your third class, which, depending on your first class and your second class, can be a little muddy, but as long as you think ahead, you'll be all right. Frankly, you can pick whatever class you want to level 10 and then switch them all up. The only thing that locks you in is your race. So just make sure that you're the race of the class that you want as your primary. Otherwise, you're going to be found pretty upset at level 10. Trade skills. Okay. Alia touched on this a little bit in their gameplay stream, but I don't think they really gave it enough weight. In fact, actually, I think that they kind of underplayed it a little bit. Trade skilling happens very quickly here. There are trade skill AAs that make sure that you succeed when crafting, meaning that you're losing less resources. And if you want to go that road, it is actually very, very, very easy to max out gear through trade skilling. Very cheap. I think it cost me 300 platinum, roughly, to get a full set of banded at +5, and even some of the pieces were +6. So it is insanely cheap and insanely efficient to set yourself up with a set of banded and give yourself massive AC early on, which will help push you through the early levels very quickly. Definitely recommend that. Late game, you've got jewel crafting, which is amazing. You've got brewing, cooking. Again, more stats, more things, more stuff. Build, make more. Trade skills, system good. Primo. Prescribing spells. Oh my god. This is a quality of life that I wish was pretty much in every single game that I play now. You can go and you can buy spells 10 levels ahead of you, and you can put them all in your book. I mean, theoretically, if you wanted to level every single class, you could literally go out and buy every single spell for every single class and put them all in your book. You would need to switch, you know, your secondary or tertiary class around to get those spells into the book. But once they're in there, and you have them all, and you don't have to worry about going back to town when you level up. You just, when you level to the next level, they're just there for you to pick. And that's great. Quality of life. Also, it acts as a really great plat sync, which is something we'll talk about later. The map. Map's great. Map also kind of taken from MQ. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think tip of the hat to the MQ folks who created that system and put that together. That is a great system. It's awesome. It increases with your tracking skill. It is great. You just go up, you right click on the map after you've opened it up, and then you go down to show NPCs, and boom, it'll show you a little circle of NPCs around you, and you can just mouse over them. It'll show you what their names are. It'll show you what's what. You can kind of go around and do whatever you want from that point. It's very helpful. I don't play with it up, but I do absolutely think that it's a good idea to play with it up. You can see when there's named up. You can see if there's a, you know, a mob around a corner or something like that. Really great, perfect freaking system to use. The user interface and information points. I have a feeling this might, and maybe I'm way off base, correct me if I'm wrong, this might be a shout out for Zachary, because I will say that there's a lot of things in the user interface that remind me of user interfaces that we saw somewhere else that Zachary built user interfaces for. So basically, the thing that I like most about it is that it has a lot of great data points. They did a really good job at discovering, hey, this is a data point that you're going to want as a player. This is a data point that you're going to want as a player. This is a data point that you're going to want as a player. And at the end of the day, they're all great data points. They're all great. What's my damage when I switch my weapons out? You know, what are my pet stats? How much regen do I have? How much attack do I have? What's my attack cap? They're all on there, and they're easy to read. Perfect. Great job. Bind on trade. Now, I know a lot of people are not going to like this, but I actually think this is a great idea. You go out, you farm an item. The item is droppable. If you put it on, it becomes attuned. If you trade it to another player, it becomes attuned to that player. So, a couple of cool things here. First and foremost, if you group with someone else and you're running around in that group and you guys are, you know, whatever, camping, and there's personal loot. So, good example of this would be Reyna and I were in Mistmore. We killed the imp, dropped the dagger for both of us. I can take my dagger, give it to Reyna, but Reyna can't sell it. Reyna can use it. Reyna can merge it in with the dagger that she got, but she can't resell it. So this is actually keeping the economy and the items that are moving around pretty small, which I think is a great thing. I don't have a problem with players selling items to other players. I think that that's really good, but stopping the item movement for just resale purposes, I'm okay with this. I actually think this is a really good way at combating that. We'll talk a little bit more about combating some of that stuff in a minute here. Exaltations, great system, amazing system. There are some limitations. They haven't really gone over all that well yet, and I do think players are going to be a little bit surprised when they see some of those limitations. They've talked about them in passing or very briefly, but it is really important to know that if I take a earring that has mana preservation and I pull the exaltation out of that, meaning I take that mana preservation out of the earring and I want to put it in another item, I can only put that in another earring. And in the cases where there are class restrictions, I cannot actually take a exaltation from one class and then put it into an object meant for another class. That doesn't actually work. I ran into that today where I have a Robe of the Oracles, which has improved damage, and I wanted to put it into my new Mithril breastplate, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out why. I was like, what is going on? You know, I've leveled both of the items up. I was able to pull the exaltation out, but I couldn't put it in. And I was like, whoa, sounds like a personal problem. But at the end of the day, still a really great system. I really enjoy that you can kind of mix and match, and it adds a lot of different dynamics depending on your class combination. There's a lot of different things you can do with that, which kind of creates this sort of situation where there is some places for creativity. It creates a situation where you can have creativity. And that creativity can be utilized to, you can make yourself a better spellcaster, you can make yourself a better melee character, you can add interesting procs with stuns or fears or snares or there's so many different things you can do. Really like those. The other big thing that I really like are the stances. The stance system is beautiful, and I don't know why that doesn't exist everywhere else. The stance system is awesome. You have balance stance, defense stance, evasive stance, range stance, and each one of these has its own system. I would say they were broken for a little bit on the beta, where you were using way more endurance than I think they probably intended. They've recently fixed them, and I think that they're in a really great place. They feel really good. They operate in a really meaningful way. A lot of people have been talking about stance dancing, which I think they have kind of dealt with a little bit. There's like a 6-second delay between switching stances again once you've switched. I don't think it hurts to increase that, or somehow I would rather not see stance dancing become a system, but that's just my opinion. That's just the way I like to play, not necessarily the way that everyone's going to want to play. It really, really ingenious, really great way to kind of add an additional layer of not only interesting, but also an extra layer of gameplay and sort of dynamic play. Good job. Now, we've gone over a lot of good things. There's also some things that make me kind of want to scratch my head. Alternate abilities being moved around. For me, as a veteran player, I know what I'm kind of looking for. And so when I go into my alternate advancement bar, I'm looking around and they've moved them around to different pages. And I don't want to say it's like confusing, but things aren't where I'm used to them being, which just feels gross. It's something I'll probably get over in time, but it is very confusing for me as a veteran player when, I'm used to Combat Fury being an archetype, not a general. There's also a very limited number of AAs right now, which I assume is because it's in beta and it's something that they're going to be building out more as time goes on. We'll get into that in a second, but there's just something about like altering the system for, I don't know, like what reason would you alter that system? You have veteran players who know the way that it used to be, and then you have new players who would come in and see it for what it is, and they'd learn the way that we all learned, as opposed to confusing everyone on both sides. I don't know. It's weird. That's just my opinion. Take it or leave it. Zoning. Okay, so you guys have heard you can raise the difficulty of the zone. Great. Awesome. Really like that. Really awesome mechanic. Really cool. Really enjoy that. However, you can't go from one zone to the next zone and still be in the higher difficulty. People are going to say, oh, well, dummy, why don't you just switch to the other one? Well, in some cases, that's great. And I'm sure within the beta, there's some things they haven't altered yet. But when you switch to a higher or harder zone difficulty, it moves your character on the map. And some of those locations that it moves you to are less than ideal. I'm looking at you, Freeport. You switch in Freeport and you're in Ixar, the newbie area that's right outside of your starter town, and it puts you in the middle of town as an Ixar, at which point guards run up and proceed to try and massage your rear end with their swords. Don't recommend it. It's something they can fix. It's something that's super easy to fix, but it does make me scratch my head a little bit because I'm just like, why not just implement it so that when you zone from one place to the next, you can just maintain the difficulty that you're in and you can control that. It would also probably help with the timers a little bit, because then you wouldn't be zoning out and then zoning back in, running into a train because somebody just trained the zone line, and then having to zone back out and wait for your timer before you can pick back in. I don't know. It seems a little weird. It's a little wonky, but hey, something they can fix. Very, very easy issue. There's no definitive platinum syncs yet. I have heard people say that they've mentioned this in the Discord and they've kind of been poo-pooed on by moderators or other staff members and things. And I got to tell you, I don't know if that's true. And frankly, it is what it is. But I do think if this game plans on being anything long term, part of that is maintaining an economy. And I was under the impression from talking about alternatives to the tunnel, from talking about maintaining a healthy economy and in some of the interviews and some of the discussions that have been happening with Secrets and various other people who are attached to the project, I'm a little unsure as to what the plan is. And I hope that this is a focus of theirs, because once the gates open and all the players are in, if your economy, or there are ways to exploit your economy early on, it doesn't take much. You know, it's very easy to get out of control. Secrets, if you watch this video, I know that this is something you can fix, and I know it's something that's on your radar too, because I went in and I tried to kill halfling guards and realized, guess what? They don't give you experience. So I know Secrets is already thinking during the development of Project Quarm, there were the male quests, and there were lots of beginner quests in which you could amass a large amount of money very early on, very quickly. Those quests are being modified. So I know it's being thought about. I just don't see them yet. It may be something they have plans for. And again, we'll talk about the plans here in a second. Classic graphics. It seems a little out of touch. In the discussion, or when they're being asked questions about the classic graphics, they say things like, oh, well, we really thought that the nostalgia would come from these classic graphics, which is, you know, cool and all, but you're also modernizing all these other systems and you're changing all these other things that are taking away from the nostalgia. I don't really know, like, it feels very disconnected. Someone in my chat, actually, to their credit, said, hey, have you thought about the fact that maybe they're going to make, you know, images, and they're going to make transmog items, or you'll be able to basically change the view, and they're going to sell you graphics for your weapons and your character and stuff. And it complicates things when you have to make the graphic not only work for the classic model, but also work for the Luckland model. And I think that that's actually a really good point. It's just one of those things where the reason they gave doesn't necessarily match the reason that I think it actually might be a good idea. And it feels a little disconnected. And so while talking about disconnected, this is probably one of the hardest things for me to kind of take in. The game feels like it has too many people's influence involved. And what I mean by that is there's mechanics and systems that are in the game that take it in a direction. Like, you can see the gaming philosophy, you can see the idea, the thought process behind it. But then suddenly, when you engage with this other system, it feels like you're being completely ripped and pushed in another direction with a completely different gaming philosophy. And I would say, at least in my leveling to level 40 on one character and then leveling to level 20 on another character, I have personally felt this pull in these different directions. You know, you're leveling your character. We want this to be easy. This is a passion project. This is respecting your time. Here's a system that's going to require you to spend hours and hours and hours just to get to, from, you know, an early point to a midpoint to a later point. Unlocking some of the races and the classes and the deities and stuff, and it feels like there's so many different influences. You know, Secrets has spoken openly about microtransactions in the past. You know, I know that both Secrets and Rogan both have like an affinity for the older content eras. They both have built a lot of games and a lot of emulators, and I say a lot of, but they've worked on a few emulators in those eras. And so it's just really odd. It just feels like there's too many hands in the kitchen, and they're cooking all sorts of different things, and I'm just not sure how to address that. Next up, no multi-questing. I don't know. It's just weird. No multi-questing. So if you want to help your buddy out and you want to go farm something and like help folks, or if you want to go, I mean, this may be leaning into one of the other things that I think that I want to talk about, which I'm putting in to the next section. So we'll touch on that a little bit more, but no multi-questing just has me scratching my head a little bit. I don't necessarily know what the motivation is. I can see there are problems in it, but I also see the benefits in it. So just one of those things that makes you scratch your head. Pet gearing is another one that kind of has me scratching my head a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, those of you who aren't in the beta, your pet can only wear gear that your 3 classes and your 2 pet classes are. So if your pet is a warrior monk and you are a, I don't know, mage, beast lord, necromancer, where we heard that one before. If you're that, then your pet can actually only wear warrior, monk, mage, beast lord, necro gear, which just feels kind of weird. It has me scratching my head a little bit. I understand that pets are insanely hard to balance. I mean, like literally insanely hard to balance. I'd be more than happy to help you guys do that. Let me tell you, I've learned there's been a lot of hours spent trying to make these things work, and I can tell you that I learned a lot of different things about these. But what I will say is it doesn't really feel good. It pays into sort of back into that, like, the game doesn't feel very cohesive, because in some areas it just feels like you're stuck on these train rails and the game is just dragging you along to play. Like you're just grinding up the hill, right? You're grinding up the hill. And then in other ways you feel like you're being given some freedom, you're being given some opportunity, you're being given some choices. But then those choices start feeling really shallow. And I hope that is because we're in beta and not everything is in the game yet. But it's hard to see at this stage. No alts and this alias system and them talking about... I mean, I hope that it's just me not understanding. But having alternate characters in an MMO is... I mean, the fact that there's only one character in an account is my least favorite part of old school RuneScape. The fact that you have to pay per character for Final Fantasy 14, unless you do the like full unlock, in which case you get a handful of character slots. But it's I don't like that. What happens when you play a character and you get to like level 30 and you realize you don't like your primary class anymore? You're not happy with some change that happened. Well, guess what? Suck it up, Buttercup. You can delete your character, or you can keep pushing through 20 more levels of something you don't want to play, or more likely, you will just unsubscribe and stop playing because you just wasted a bunch of time, and the only way out is to delete your character or pay for another account. Which I know some people are going to say in the comments, oh my God, well, we'll just buy another account or we'll just do these things. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. Not everybody's going to be in that same headspace. Not everybody's going to want to pay into that same trap. And I say that because you are essentially locked into playing that primary class for 50 levels at a minimum. You know, I worry about the fact that you are attaching people. Again, it comes back to that whole, you're putting people on rails and you're sort of driving them along. What happens when they're like, no, I want to stop and I want to get on that train over there? And they're like, tough. I mean, here's the thing. You can drive your train off the cliff and you can go try that train over there. You don't really get a feel. You're not, at level 10, you don't have any idea what your character is going to look like later on, what spells you're going to have access to. You're not going to know what AAs feel good or feel bad, because, which this brings me into the next issue, the locked AA progression. They have set it up so that you can't like stop and farm AAs at any point, you just get automatic AA progression for leveling your character, meaning as you kill things, you gain regular XP and AA XP. You can't stop either one. You can't decide to put more XP into one and not the other. You can't move that around at all, which means you're basically getting the same rate of AA regardless of whatever you choose to do. Well, while right now there is a relatively shallow pool of AA, it feels really bad when you level up to a certain point. You've got a very small pocket of AA to spend. There's these abilities, you spend them, and you're like, I actually don't really like the way this feels. Sucks to be you. You're locked in. Figure it out. Again, you're putting people on rails and you're driving them forward. And that feels bad. Telling people how to play or what they're going to play usually does not result in positivity and good places. And again, I'm going to say this real loud, just so everybody, I'm going to lean right in, okay? This is a beta. This can change. They very well could change these. They could have plans to change these things. But as it stands right now, this is the way things are. Which brings me to the bad stuff. They seem pretty stuck on these 7-day lockouts for raid targets, meaning you can only kill gods and Nagafin and Vox once, or get loot from them once per a difficulty per a week, which, let's be frank, I can log in, I can probably wipe out all of those targets pretty quickly, especially if I log in. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about this until now, but if I log in with, like, let's say 2 or 3 of my friends, and we literally just go and we kill, we port to the next one, we kill, we port to the next one, we kill, we port to the next one, and then we up the difficulty, and then we summon each other through, port to the next one. I mean, there's just it. You're going to be able to do that pretty quickly. I understand the want or the desire to prevent people from over farming or oversaturating your market. And I do feel like you've taken some steps, some actually really positive steps when it comes to the bind on trade. But to limit the amount that people can play your game, to basically say, you can only play my game this much in this way. If you wanted to play that way more, tough noodles. You got to play this other way. In other words, if you want to keep playing my game, you can go farm other items, you can go work trade skills, or you can go level up other classes, or you can go do, there's Plane of Sky quests to unlock other coins and things, the tokens, which is the token system screams monetization, and I'm not even going to get into that because, man, that's frustrating. There's tokens for everything, and tokens to me is transactional. If it wasn't meant to be transactional, it wouldn't be a token. You'd just have an unlock. You wouldn't create a currency for the unlock, and that worries me. That worries me quite a bit. They have said in answering many questions, like the characters only having access to one character per an account, they have said things like, we're doing this to combat boxing. They've done things like we've removed follow to combat boxing and botting, and it's just like, I hate to tell you this, guys, the more levels of friction that you put into this game, the harder people are going to work to break it. The solution to stopping people from using cheats and things is to make your game in a way that does not provide friction in which people want to get around that part of your game. It is not to make it harder on people, because you are essentially, when you design a wall for a certain group of people, other people who don't even meet that criteria are hitting that same wall and feeling unincluded, feeling like they've been targeted. There's a lot of people with disabilities that play EverQuest. I've just done interviews with Michelle and Jeff and Zach, and we've got some other interviews set up, and almost all of them have told stories about people who had disabilities who are playing the game And that's because systems like follow exist. And while I certainly understand that you want to eradicate the ability to bot or box or whatever, you're also harming an already vulnerable population. And unfortunately, while I know that a lot of people are just going to be like, it's not that big of a deal, it's not that serious, you're crapping on a vulnerable like group of people. I work with charities that serve these people. I talk with these people all the time, and it just feels a little tone deaf. This could change. They could go back on this, and frankly, I hope they do. Ah, man, the respect your time term. I got to tell you, if right now is indicative of anything the gaming philosophy is headed in, I don't really know is that respect your time is necessarily going to be the adhering statement of this project. Everything is really grindy. Leveling feels grindy. Leveling your items feels grindy. There's not really like this, you're not jumping from cool point to cool point, and maybe they have plans for this, and frankly, I hope they do. But typically, I think a lot of casual players, and one of the reasons that like THJ was really great is you could log in, you could play your character, you could do it however you wanted. You weren't set on rails. If you wanted to just play an alt, or you wanted to do a solo self-found thing, or you wanted to do this other thing without influence, you had options to do that. You could set up your own challenge modes and things like that, which is not something you can do when you only have one character on your account, when everything you do influences your character in some way or another. It is unfortunate, and it's something that I genuinely hope they take a look at when they're addressing the philosophy of their game development as a whole. Placeholders. I've heard so many different things, and I've seen so many different notes on, I was originally told that there's going to be no placeholders, and then I was told that there's going to be no placeholders, but only in the zones that they revamp. And then I was told that they're going to be revamping everything, and there's going to be no placeholders in any zones. They just haven't gotten there yet. And now I'm reading, I just read on their Discord that, this is the public Discord, mind you, I just read that there might be placeholders in some places, but not in other places, and it all depends. They got to shake it all out. Guys, you're asking a box price, you're asking a subscription price, and you're including microtransactions, and you're asking people to dedicate their time to your game. And by doing so, you are creating a dynamic in which folks want to log into your game. Your game is fun. Your game is good. Genuinely, I'm telling you, I enjoy your game. I think it is a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of hope here. I think there's a lot of great opportunity here. However, secrets. You've done this with so many of your servers where one day you have this mindset and you're going this way, and then 5 minutes goes by and you're headed off in a completely different direction. I hope and pray that you and the group of developers that are around you are keeping that kind of thing in check, because that will kill your projects very quickly. And you know this. You have seen this happen. Classless 1.0, one of my favorite emulated servers that I have ever played on in all my time in EverQuest. Classless 1.0. It was the best 3 weeks ever. And then wipe and revamp and wipe and revamp and wipe and revamp and wipe and it's just, nope, no thanks. I'm good. I'm Snake Solid. Please. I'm seeing a little bit of that. I'm seeing directions start heading this way, and then, we're actually going in this way a little bit. Please don't. Please. I genuinely believe that you have a wonderful thing here. Just take each step slowly, think each step through, bounce things off each other, and hopefully that will also benefit that whole, things not feeling cohesive in the game. They're kind of jarred and going in different directions. And so my biggest concern is kind of, you know, they've said a lot as far as this is the direction we're going in. This is what we want to do. This is what we're pushing for. However, you have, let's say, you know, if you get this done by July 31st, the end of July, like, you have very limited time. I don't know if you're going to complete all these systems that you're telling people are going to get, and you're saying there's a box price, you're saying there's a subscription price, and you're saying there's microtransactions. You're selling an incomplete game, promising all these things, and in today's day, this has not been a good thing for gamers. And you've spoken out against this yourself, Secrets. You know, I'm talking to you directly. You may not even watch this video, but I will say on numerous occasions, I'm not going to put the comments up or anything, but like, you have said on so many occasions you were against this type of thing. So I have to ask myself, how much influence is actually coming down from above you? I'll conclude at that, and I'll say the game's good, guys. The game is good. It's a lot of fun. I think that as long as they get their stuff together, they get things put together, it's going to be worth checking out. There's a lot for these devs to do. A lot for these devs to do. And frankly, I hope they get there, and I hope that they're successful. Time will tell. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. See you next time. Love ya.